wind up dead of starvation in a cheap room. Me? I'd never get that scared of being broke. At the age of 70 or 80? Especially then. I'd probably tear loose for a while and then buy into a home for the aged. I wanted to grin, but I didn't. He'd proved my point. He'd also shown that he was as bothered by these old people as I was. Tell me, Lou, if somebody kept you from dying, would you give him any dough for it, even if you were a senile psychotic? I could see him using the Stanislavski method to feel his way to the answer. He shook his head. Not while I was alive. Will it, maybe. Not give it. How would that be as a motive? He leaned against a metal filing cabinet. No good, Mark. You know what a hell of a time we have tracking down relatives to give the money to, because these people don't leave wills. The few relatives we find are always surprised when they get their inheritance. Most of them hardly remember dear old whoever it was that died and left it to them. All the other estates eventually go to the state treasury, unclaimed. Well, it was an idea. I opened the oldest bank book again. Anybody ever think of testing the ink, Lou? What for? The bank's records always check. These aren't forgeries, if that's what you're thinking. I don't know what I'm thinking, I admitted. But I'd like to turn a chemist loose on this for a little while. Look, Mark, there's a lot I'm willing to do for you, and I think I've done plenty, but there's a limit. I let him explain why he couldn't let me borrow the book and then waited while he figured out how it could be done and did it. He was still grumbling when he helped me pick a chemist out of the telephone directory and went along to the lab with me. But don't get any wrong notions, he said on the way. I have to protect state property, that's all, because I signed for it and I'm responsible. Sure, I agreed to humor him. If you're not curious, why not just wait outside for me? He gave me one of those white-tooth grins that he had no right to deprive women audiences of. I could do that, but I'd rather see you make a sap of yourself. I turned the bank book over to the chemist and we waited for the report. When it came, it had to be translated. The ink was typical of those used 50 years ago. Lou Pape gave me a jab in the ribs at that. But then the chemist said that, according to the amount of oxidation, it seemed fresh enough to be only a few months or years old, and it was Lou's turn to get jabbed. Lou pushed him about the aging, asking if it couldn't be the result of unusually good care. The chemist couldn't say. That depended on the kind of care, an airtight compartment, perhaps, filled with one of the inert gases, or a vacuum. They hadn't been kept that way, of course, so Lou looked as baffled as I felt. He took the bank book and we went out to the street. See what I mean? I asked quietly, not wanting to rub it in. I see something, but I don't know what. Do you? I wish I could say yes. It doesn't make any more sense than anything else about these cases. What do you do next? Damned if I know. There are thousands of old people in the city. Only a few of them take this way out. I have to try to find them before they do. If they're loaded, they won't say so, Mark. And there's no way of telling them from those who are down and out. I rubbed my pipe disgruntledly against the side of my nose to oil it. Ain't this a beaut of a problem? I wish I liked problems. I hate them. Lou had to get back on duty. I had nowhere to go and nothing to do except worry my way through this tangle. He headed back to headquarters and I went over to the park and sat in the sun, warming myself and trying to think like a senile psychotic who would rather die of starvation than spend a few cents for food. I didn't get anywhere, naturally. There are too many ways of beating starvation, too many chances of being found before it's too late. And the fresh ink, over half a century old. I took to hanging around banks, hoping I'd see someone come in with an old bank book that had fresh ink from 50 years before. Lou was some help there. He convinced the guards and tellers that I wasn't an old-looking guy casing the place for a gang, and even got the tellers to watch out for particularly dark ink in ancient bank books. I stuck at it for a month, although there were a few stage calls that didn't turn out right, and one radio and 2 TV parts which did and kept me going. I was almost glad the stage parts hadn't been given to me. They'd have interrupted my outside work. After a month without a thing turning up at the banks, though, I went back to my 2 rooms in the theatrical hotel one night, tired and discouraged, and I found Lou there. I expected him to give me another talk on dropping the whole thing. He'd been doing that for a couple of weeks now, every time we got together. I felt too low to put up an argument. But Lou was holding back his excitement, acting like a cop, you know, instead of projecting his feelings, and he couldn't haul me out to his car as fast as he probably wanted me to go. Been trying to get in touch with you all day, Mark. Some old guy was found wandering around, dazed and suffering from malnutrition, with $17,000 in cash inside the lining of his jacket. Alive? I asked, shocked right into eagerness again. Just barely. They're trying intravenous feeding to pull him through. I don't think he'll make it. For God's sake, let's get there before he conks out. Lou raced me to the city hospital and up to the ward. There was a scrawny old man in a bed, nothing but a papery skin stretched thin over a face like a skull and a body like a Halloween skeleton, shivering as if he was cold. I knew it wasn't the cold. The medics were injecting a heart stimulant into him, and he was vibrating like a rattletrap car racing over a gravel road. "Who are you?" I practically yelled, grabbing his skinny arm. "What happened to you?" He went on shaking with his eyes closed and his mouth open. "Ah, hell," I said, disgusted. "He's in a coma." "He might start talking," Lou told me. "I fixed it up so you can sit here and listen in case he does." "So I can listen to delirious ravings, you mean?" Lou got me a chair and put it next to the bed. "What are you kicking about? This is the first live one you've seen, isn't it? That ought to be good enough for you." He looked as annoyed as a director. "Besides, you can get biographical data out of delirium that you'd never get if he was conscious." He was right, of course. Not only data, but attitudes, wishes, resentments that would normally be repressed. I wasn't thinking of acting at the moment, though. Here was somebody who could tell me what I wanted to know, only he couldn't talk. Lou went to the door. "Good luck," he said, and went out. I sat down and stared at the old man, willing him to talk. I don't have to ask if you've ever done that. Everybody has. You keep thinking over and over, getting more and more tense. Talk, damn you, talk! Until you find that every muscle in your body is a fist and your jaws are aching because you've been clenching your teeth so hard. You might just as well not bother, but once in a while a coincidence makes you think you've done it. Like now. The old man sort of came to. That is, he opened his eyes and looked around without seeing anything, or it was so far away and long ago that nobody else could see what he saw. I hunched forward on the chair and willed harder than ever. Nothing happened. He stared at the ceiling and through and beyond me. Then he closed his eyes again and I slumped back, defeated and bitter, but that was when he began talking. There were a couple of women, though they might have been little girls in his childhood, and he had his troubles with them. He was praying for a toy train, a roadster, to pass his tests, to keep from being fired, to be less lonely, and back to toys again. He hated his father, and his mother was too busy with church bazaars and such to pay much attention to him. There was a sister. She died when he was a kid. He was glad she died, hoping maybe now his mother would notice him. But he was also filled with guilt because he was glad. Then somebody, he felt, was trying to shove him out of his job. The intravenous feeding kept dripping into his vein and he went on rambling. After 10 or 15 minutes of it, he fell asleep. I felt so disappointed that I could have slapped him awake, only it wouldn't have done any good. Smoking would have helped me relax, but it wasn't allowed, and I didn't dare go outside for one for fear he might revive again, and this time come up to the present. "Broke!" he suddenly shrieked, trying to sit up. I pushed him down gently, and he went on in frightful terror. "Old and poor, nowhere to go. Nobody wants me, can't make a living. Read the ads every day, no jobs for old men." He blurted through weeks, months, years, I don't know, of fear and despair. And finally he came to something that made his face glow like a radium dial. "An ad. No experience needed. Good salary." His face got dark and awful. All he added was, "El Greco," or something that sounded like it, and then he went into terminal breathing. I rang for the nurse and she went for the doctor. I couldn't stand the long moments when the old man's chest stopped moving, the abrupt, frantic gulps of air followed by no breath at all. I wanted to get away from it, but I had to wait for whatever more he might say. It didn't come. His eyes fogged and rolled up, and he stopped taking those spasmodic, strangling breaths. The nurse came back with a doctor who felt his pulse and shook his head. She pulled the blanket over the old man's face. I left, feeling sick. I'd learned things I already knew about hate and love and fear and hope and frustration. There was an ad in it somewhere, but I had no way of telling if it had been years ago or recently. And a name that sounded like El Greco. That was a Spanish painter of 400 or 500 years ago. Had the old guy been remembering a picture he'd seen? No, he'd come up at least close to the present. The ad seemed to solve his problem about being broke. But what about the $17,000 that had been found in the lining of his jacket? He hadn't mentioned that. Of course, being a senile psychotic, he could have considered himself broke even with that amount of money. None coming in, you see. That didn't add up either. His was the terror of being old and jobless. If he'd had money, he would have figured out how to make it last, and that would have come through in one way or another. There was the ad, there was his hope, and there was this El Greco. A Greek restaurant, maybe, where he might have been bumming his meals. But where did the 17,000